this is my conversation with Albert Chen, Albert. The Chen is
EN.
EN, yeah?
Yes.
Chen. He's a co-founder of Mask Lab, a mask factory and mask testing center in San Pokong factory today on the 23rd of June 2020. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you.
So can you tell us more about what is Mask Lab? What do you do in Mask Lab?
So Mask Lab, we are a new Hong Kong manufacturer of surgical face masks and other types of protective face masks. Our selling point is that we are the first open tour factory in Hong Kong in which anybody can come register online and come visit our factory and tour it. And at the same time, we have an in-house tester for our mask filters. So with that, we're able to verify the quality of all the masks we make and also of other masks as well.
So apart from producing your own mask, you also test the mask for other factories.
Correct. So the difference is we are not a ISO 17025 certified lab. So what we do is pre-testing checks. So if a factory wants to send their masks out for third-party testing, they need to come to us first, and we can verify that, okay, it's likely that you will pass, but we don't give out any certifications. Okay. We only give verification. Okay,
but you give some sort of report, right?
Yes. Well, our form of report is very simplistic. It's a printout of the BFE number and the delta P number.
BFE
and the delta P number. Delta P as in differential pressure.
Delta P.
Differential pressure.
Differential pressure.
Yeah.
Do you also test other PFE and VFE?
So our machine is not able to test PFE. Our machine is able to test down to 0.3 microns, and 0.3 microns is what's used to test N95 masks. So we use that as a reference, but it's not the same test method for surgical masks as ASTM. So it's not something that we use as a definitive answer. So we only say, okay, if you look at the 3.0 micron level, then that's the BFE, and that's fairly accurate within 0.5%.
Okay. So when did you start Mask Lab? When did you start?
Our first concept, we conceived of the concept of Mask Lab in February, but it wasn't until this space we actually rented it in at the end of March. So March 25th is when we signed the lease here, and we officially started selling a month later. So I would say around the third week of April is when we started selling.
Okay. Can you tell me what was the process that you took to start this mask factory and testing center?
Okay, so the process is that first of all, we decided that we wanted to make masks, right? So we looked into. So just a quick background about our company, 3i Corporation. We've been around for 22 years. We mainly make outdoor furniture, such as the one you're sitting on right now, and within these cushions, we use non-woven fabric for purposes of water repellent. So that's the same fabric that masks use on the outside.
Okay.
So we have a little bit of experience with that. So the first thing we did was look into suppliers for non-wovens and as well as the melt blown fabric on the inside, the filter. Second, so our family is Taiwanese, so we were looking for the best surgical mask machines come from Taiwan. If you look at HKTV Mall, they also buy the same machines from Taiwan. So the first thing we did was, before all the travel bans, we were in Taiwan looking to buy these machines. That was the first thing we had to do because it was around 60 days. Some places were quoting 120 days delivery time. So we bought it, we got it delivered around April. The second thing we had to do was look for a space, because even though our company has been in manufacturing for 22 years, our facilities are mainly in mainland China, and we have one in the US as well. But in Hong Kong, we only had an office, and Hong Kong hasn't been a manufacturing hub for decades.
Yes.
So it took us a while to find the space. We had to go through 2 or 3. We had some failed signing. So we originally thought we were going to be somewhere else, but that turned out not to be the case. So finally we found this place. This used to be a garment warehouse. It was the floor came with it, but everything else we had to do from scratch. So within 2 weeks, we had to contract a clean room manufacturer, and we had to set up all the clean room, and then came the certifications. The clean room had to be certified. They would send somebody and do a full day testing, as well as the bacteria testing for the space. What they would do is they would measure the amount of harmful particles in the space and make sure that we pass. Then they'll give us certification for that. Once machines come, we have to start. So one of the biggest challenges we faced was that usually machines come with technicians. They would fly over and help you set it up. So the difference here is that because of all the travel ban, they set the machines and said, good luck. Right, so we had to help. So mainly my dad is an engineer, so he helped set the machines up with all our staff. It took about 2 weeks of fine tuning for it to start proper production. And once the masks start coming out, the first thing we had to do is send them to testing. So that's the reason why we bought the automated filter tester for in-house, because as we made them, right now, if you go send it to Nelson Lab or SGS, the turnaround time is 60 days, sometimes 90 days. So what we didn't want to do was send them over, wait 60 days, and realize our masks were not up to their standards. So what we did was we spent some money and imported our own in-house filter tester, which is similar, not exactly how ASTM tests it, but you get an idea. So we would run all our masks through that tester and then send them to third-party testing. And afterwards, in production, we use it as a verification purpose. So like making sure all our masks are still the same standard as when we sent it out for testing. I think that's about it on how we started and all the process.
Sure. What was your motivation when you started this lab factory?
So 2 things. Number one, in February, we saw that the pandemic was getting worse. One of our first thought was that, hey, let's make masks. It was originally just a small thought, but what we noticed was a lot of companies were coming out and getting into this business. The main difference is we saw that a lot of companies had no experience in manufacturing at all. And we thought that a lot of people were out just to make money and made dubious quality masks, right? So we wanted to come out and create masks for not just Hong Kong, but for the world, but using our 20 years of manufacturing experience. But also we wanted to do it in a way that's the most transparent, because a lot of people post fake reports online, or even they post correct reports, their company might not actually be living up to that standard. So what we wanted to do was to create an open tour facility in which if you want to buy our stuff, you can come and visit and see for yourself what you're buying. So that's our number one motivation, which is to create a safe and transparent mask brand.
Okay. So when you launched the factory, did you have any plans? Did you make any plans to launch this factory?
Sorry, I don't know.
Some people, when they want to start a business, they make plans.
Oh, right.
Do you make such plans when you want to launch this mask lab?
So I understand what you're saying. We didn't make any concrete formal business plans. Yep. Most of what we did was we jotted on paper, and we had a vision of what that would look like, and we just followed it. We have regular meetings to make sure we're still doing all these things, but that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just some rough idea of what you did.
Correct.
So I think partly you have mentioned this. I'm asking how you put together different things like the raw materials, the equipment, the machine, the manpower, the technicians. How do you assemble and put all these things together so the factory can run? I mean, what did you go through?
Okay. Well, first of all, let's talk about the materials. So the materials, like I mentioned earlier, because of the industry that we worked in, we already had suppliers that made it. And by extension, using the connections of these suppliers, we were able to get melt-blown fabric, which was the main challenge in the mask business. And I'm assuming that you'll visit other mask factories and ask the same thing. One of the two biggest challenges: number one, machine. Number two, melt-blown fabric. That's it. So melt-blown fabric, we were able to leverage our existing connections. That's why most of our sources right now, all our melt-blown fabric is from the U.S. because we leverage our U.S. connections there. So that's that. For the machine, we leverage our family connections in Taiwan.
Taiwan.
So for the rest, we already have. The good thing about us is that we weren't starting a factory or starting a company. We were starting a factory from scratch. I'm sorry. So we weren't starting a company from scratch. So our managers, most of our executive team remained the same, and all we mostly had to do was hire workers, and that was originally a very complicated thing to do. But we were able to find help through friends and business connections that were able to get us all the workforce that we currently have.
I see.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you conceived the idea in February 2020, and you actually officially launched it on the third week of April. That was like within slightly less than 2 months.
Correct.
Is that period considered long, short, normal? I don't know. What do you think?
That's a hard question to answer, because I think in general that would be considered short by any in any industry. But during the COVID pandemic, a lot of factories have mobilized even faster. I don't know what the average is, because for every factory that is able to mobilize and be done within a month and a half, there are a lot that I know of that can't get it done even today after 3 months. So I would say we're above average in the speed.
Compared to if you were to set up a mask factory in a non-COVID environment,
Right.
how long would you think it would take you?
I would say it would take around 1 to 2 more months. Maybe 1 more month, because as when you invest in a business, you want it to return as soon as possible. But what we would probably save costs on is the rush fees, right? So we had to spend a lot of money, air shipping products, machines and stuff. We would perhaps use ocean freight, and we would perhaps shop around more for different contractor quotes and such. So that would cause a delay of probably around a month.
I see. So you mentioned you had about 22 years of this furniture
Correct.
industry manufacturing experience. I believe that is your parents' business, or you're also
My
involved,
parents,
right?
yeah, I'm
So-
involved as well.
And then you switch into producing masks. Did you have to deviate from normal ways of working, normal routines that your company are used to in the furniture production into the mask factory?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest differences is our team in Hong Kong used to be an office team. We would answer emails and then check up on our factories in China and the US. Whereas now we work directly in the factory. So every day, a lot of things are still the same, but the main difference is we become much more hands-on ourselves. So I think as you're coming in, all the staff were packing boxes. These are for our online orders, and these were things that we wouldn't do before. So these are done by our office staff right now.
Would you have started this mask lab had we not have any COVID-19?
Probably not, because I wouldn't think, if you asked me even like in January, do you think this is something I would be doing? Probably not, because wearing a mask was the last thing on my mind back in January.
Yes.
And I myself actually was a skeptic of mask wearing for a while, until I read a report saying how asymptomatic transmission is a big thing in in COVID-19. And that's when I realized mask wearing is really important, and that's why I got into this business.
What do you hope to achieve through this mask lab?
Well, number one, we hope to become a authority in what is safe to wear for masks around the world. So Hong Kong, where we launch, is just the beginning. We want to take this to the world. And on another point, I think the world is currently skeptical about made in China products.
Yep.
So I think us being in Hong Kong, we are able to leverage this movement and bring about made in Hong Kong quality to the rest of the world. And that's something I'm really excited to do.
So does your decision to start the mask lab, was it related to the social political situation of Hong Kong?
Not exactly. For us, the focus has mainly been on the health crisis, not the social political problem.
So we heard that there's an increasing number of face mask factories in Hong Kong.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
Well, let me think about that for a second. What does that mean? So there's a lot, and I think that's great because, you know, in February, right, there was a huge lack of masks. And I think right now there may be a slight oversupply. And I think in general, that's a good thing for the population. What that means for us as a company is that we can't focus only in Hong Kong as our market. And I'm really happy that Hong Kong is getting enough masks. And now, so much so that export is where we need to focus on.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's negative at all. I think Hong Kong has done a fantastic job in preventing the spread of COVID-19. And now, but a lot of other countries haven't, and that's our job now to do so. So that's my, yeah.
So in starting the mask lab and the mask testing facility, did you take inspiration from other people or someone else? Because there's no textbook to how to do it. I mean,
Correct. Yeah. So prior to this, I had been in e-commerce and brand building for about 10 years myself. I have a lot of side projects and brands that have started. So my main inspiration was to make masks look less hospital-like and more consumer-friendly. So that was the main motivation I had, which was to create a brand that's more friendly to consumers. Because if this is going to be our new normal, because by some estimates we would be wearing this for the next year or two, right? So if this is going to be our new normal, then I want our brand to be less clinical and more consumer friendly. So that was the biggest thing. I don't think I took from a brand or you know, any brand in particular, but it's just from my personal experience.
so your previous work experience is actually kind of influencing how you see these mask businesses.
Correct. Yes.
So I assume you're selling the mask, but do you also give for free for some people? Or
Yes. We donate both in Hong Kong and Europe. Sorry, not both. In Hong Kong, Europe, and in the United States. So in Hong Kong, we are working with a few charities to do senior citizens living alone. We're actually donating some again this week, about 20,000 masks to that cause. Last week, we donated 20,000 masks to the city of New York. Because of our connection with the city of New York. In Europe, we have donated to the United Kingdom, I believe.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you give away, okay, let's say selling. When you sell it, do you sell to companies or to B2C, to directly individuals?
Both.
How is it? Both.
So when we first started, because of our background, most of our customers were B2B. We were mainly selling direct to companies that need to use it in bulk or resellers. In the past month, we really ramped up our B2C operation. So if you look at our website, www.masklab.hk, you can actually buy directly from there. All these, if you see these people right now, they're coming to pick up, and we're shipping out directly to all the customers. So that's this thing we just started maybe a month ago.
I see. So for B2C, do you have a minimum mask that people can buy?
No, just one box.
Just one box, at least
box,
you can sell.
yeah.
Okay.
Before, so when we first started, it was harder for our logistics to work. So we did, it was minimum 4 boxes, but now we've caught up logistically. So now, you know, they can order however many they want.
So in terms of the proportion of your sales, B2B versus B2C, how has it changed from the first month until now?
So I think, you know, in the beginning it was like 100% B2B, and then eventually now I would say it's still a lot B2B, but B2C is catching up. I would say 60% B2B and then 40% B2C,
Okay.
and hopefully, you know, we can stay that way.
Picking up quickly, the
picking-
B2C.
Yes. I was surprised that even now people are still buying a lot of masks in Hong Kong. Mainly because we just came out with the color, and we have 6 colors right now, and
Right.
it's pretty interesting because the sales have kind of dwindled until we did colors, and now everybody wants masks again. Like I said, I feel like this is because
Is it becoming more like a fashion item now?
yes,
So become
yeah,
colors?
we've noticed that. At first, we're like safety first. Safety is the most important thing. That's what we call a mask lab, where we're testing all our products. But now that's basic. Everybody knows that if you want to be a mask company, you have to have safe products. But now people are asking, how can I stand out? How can I make this a personality thing? As you start wearing it for months, maybe years, people will want to stand out because you're covering half your face anyway. So you want to make it special.
I see. So when you are giving away, you are donating the
Yes.
masks. Do you have a certain target beneficiaries? Do you have a selection criteria of who you want to donate the mask to?
So we prioritize healthcare workers
Oh, okay.
and senior citizens.
Okay.
But beyond that, we look at it from a case by case basis.
Oh, okay. How much can you produce in a day or in a month?
So in a day, right now, we top out these two machines top out 100,000 masks a day total. Upstairs, we're making N95 masks and KF95 masks, KF94 masks. Those are around half.
50,000.
Yeah, 50,000
So you can produce 150,000.
a day at max.
So when you say N95,
Yeah, sorry, we don't have the N95 certification yet.
Yeah.
It's the N95 style.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got approved for FFP2. That's the European standard. That's
Okay.
equivalent to N95.
Okay.
So I shouldn't have said N95, FFP2.
Okay.
But it's less the name's less known.
so actually you have 2 floors of the factory.
Correct. The top floor we just got certified for the clean room. So yeah, we have 2 floors.
Already operating or
We're doing test runs.
test.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Cool. Do you think that's a lot to produce like 100,000 to 150,000 masks per day? Is it a lot
It's-
for Hong Kong?
For Hong Kong, I would say it's average because we are actually also friends with a few mask factories. I don't want to name them, but some have 10 machines and they can run maybe like 5 times our capacity, or sometimes 6-7 times. But I also see some that have less.
I
So
see. So for yours, how many production lines do you call
we
this?
have 2. Well,
Two
I can
production
show
lines.
you later.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We'll have a look. So, do you produce other things except from apart from face masks? Do you produce other things?
Currently, no. We only make face masks.
How many employees do you have?
So office employees, we have around 10. The workers, we have full-time around 5, but then we have 15 to 20 or 30. I would say actually 30 rotating temporary staff.
Okay. So the 10 are full timers.
Full-time
and 30
office.
are
I would say temporary.
temporary
Yeah.
staffers. Okay. So do you print a brand name on the masks?
Yes. Can you see
Okay.
it?
Okay. This is the brand name. Do you prefer to use a single brand or multiple brands?
We prefer to use a single brand.
Just a single brand.
Yes.
Right. Is there any reason why you just use one brand?
Just because we can leverage all the brand equity that we build onto one brand.
Sure.
So if we make a name for ourselves in making color masks, when we do our N95 and do our KF mask, we can pass over the brand equity that we built.
Well, I'm asking this because some of those we talk to, they prefer to have multiple brands.
Yeah,
And
that's
there are
another way
different
to do it.
reasons.
Yeah. They can push each to a different market segment, I
Yeah.
guess. But for us, it's less so.
Yeah. Is having that brand name mask lab important for your business?
I would say so because masks by themselves are a very homogeneous product. And because of how homogeneous it is, it's very important to have something that makes it stand out. And it's for us, it's having that brand name, and also we're creating some signature designs pretty soon. The end goal is that as everyone's wearing face masks in the future, you walk in the streets and you'll see, oh, this guy's wearing a Mask Lab mask. And that's how I think we can come out ahead in this industry.
Okay. Do your users or buyers, could be B2B buyers or B2C buyers, do they care about the brand of the mask, do you think?
You know, it's actually pretty interesting. We asked a couple of people, we have tours every day, and they ask, a lot of them who haven't bought our mask before say, "Do you have a logo on your mask?" And I say, "Why?" And they said they would only buy it if we have a logo on our mask. I guess it's like what I said earlier. It's having some kind of brand tag. It's a fashionable thing. So yeah.
But also it could be they're worried if there are masks that are, what do you call them? They come from unknown sources.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted
Sure,
to know.
sure. It's a great way of telling because these molds are not cheap, so it takes a while.
How do you get the public to support your
Mm-hmm.
masks? Do you do something to get the public to support the masks?
Yeah, so we do a lot of social media marketing. We have a Facebook group that we don't have a ton of followers, but we do giveaways. We constantly update the community on the products that we're developing, and we share with them interviews that we've done. I recently did an interview with FinTech TV in New York. So yeah, that's how we get the people excited, and so far we've had fairly good response and pretty high engagement from our existing followers.
Do you have other people who help you to start this mask business apart from your parents?
Well, I guess all the staff here
Oh,
also helped. My brother also, he's in the U.S.
Oh.
He manages our U.S. facility, so
Okay.
he's been a big help in sourcing materials from the U.S.
Definitely.
I've had, a lot of friends who I've called favor on, who, for help us warehousing stuff in different countries. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think it's definitely been a group effort from everybody, from the staff to our extended connections to our friends to everyone, because I feel like this has been a different. I've started many different businesses in the past, but I think this is a really different one because it's the first time I felt that so many people immediately, jumped on board because of the pandemic and everyone wanted to help. I also have friends who introduced a lot of initial buyers, helped us get some certifications. So certainly, it's been a lot of help.
Do you do like pre-order, pre-sales?
We do not do any pre-order.
Any reasons for not doing that?
Well, two reasons. Number one is we don't want to commit to something that we are not 100% certain we can fill, because the pressure that would actually cause the business down the line if we don't fulfill it would be very tough. So that's number one. Number two is we believe it's unethical to sell products prior to even having a machine, which is what I've seen some people do. And for us, we're not really in it for the money. I mean, it's good that we have created a good business, but the number one priority for us when we first started this was to provide masks for the public. And if we don't have masks, we don't want to sell it. So,
Do you have other co-investors, shareholders in the
no,
business?
it's 100% funded by 3i Corporation, which is the parent company.
Who do you consider as collaborators? Is there any collaborators for your?
Currently, no. You're talking about other companies that would collaborate.
Yeah,
So we did one collaboration with an online platform in Hong Kong called fairbuy.hk. That went fairly well for us. I don't know, like how many. Have you ever interviewed Lockhill? The Zhongfo Gogo, they would say really bad things about them. They had a fallout, but we had a pretty good experience with them.
I see. Fair, but still collaborating.
We stopped because they sold out of our products already.
Okay.
But we haven't. Our new launched products, we're not working with them. We're selling directly.
Sure. I'm interested also about the design and how it evolves over time. Does your mask, the design, does it change over the time?
So the actual masks themselves are pretty standard. They come directly from the automated machines.
Yeah.
So those don't change. The things that we have control over is the fabric that we use, the design we use, and the materials. So like we're experimenting within these parameters. So for us, we're changing the mask colors, the side seam, the hem colors. the ear loop colors,
Mm.
and then we might add a carbon filter inside to make it smell better and also look darker. So for our darker color masks, that's what we might do to make it even darker. That's about it.
Okay. Do you have how many layers? 3 layers?
We have 3 layers.
Three layers.
If we add a carbon filter, it'd be 4.
Before. But 3 layers should be the kind of a standard, am I right?
Correct,
Standard
correct. That's why they're
mask.
called 3-ply surgical
Right,
masks.
right. Hopefully you can show us later some
Oh,
photos
yeah.
so we can see the design.
The design? Okay.
What they look like. Did you do any innovation or R&D on the masks?
No, not particularly R&D, simply because this has been a very mature technology for a while. So our biggest design was working with the factory to make sure, working with the machine manufacturer to make sure the machine makes exactly what we want.
Because it's very much machine dependent, isn't
Correct,
it?
correct.
So in order to make something new, you gotta use a new machine.
Yes,
And of
or
course,
modify parts of the machine,
Part of the machine.
but it's difficult. So
Right.
we can give you a tour right after this and show you how it's done.
Do you think we should have more face mask factories in Hong Kong?
Honestly, I think we have more than enough. I joined the union recently, started by K Kwang, and apparently there are 200 mask factories in Hong Kong. So I don't know if we need more than 200 in Hong Kong. I think 200 is plenty.
I see. When you say 200, are they
I think
reusable masks or,
Yeah,
or
no,
just
dis-
disposable? Just
disposable,
disposable.
yeah.
And this doesn't include those reusable.
No.
Kind of handmade.
Yeah, this union that they started recently, I think it's mainly for disposable masks.
Disposable. 200 plus factories.
Yes. Given that I think only about 50 are in operation, 150 they might have the space, they renovated it, and they have the machines coming, but they haven't been able to be operational. We hear about this a lot too because we all of us share the same few consultants because there hasn't been a lot of mass consultants in Hong Kong before, so they go around, and so we hear about what's going
I
on.
see. Who is or who are the kind of well-known mask consultants? Is Dr. K Kwong one of them?
Dr. K Kwong is pretty well known. Recently, he's been a pretty controversial figure. So we don't work with him directly. We work with SGS and consultants who came from SGS. So I think it's mainly SGS, Intertech, BV. Yeah, that's about it. That's the 3 major companies that's doing masks, and they would admit it. I don't know if they will admit it to you guys, but they would admit it that they themselves haven't been that experienced in mask compliance either. So a lot of them are still learning as they go. So it's been an interesting experience.
Do this SGS, Intertech, BV, do they produce masks themselves or just
No.
just consultation?
They're purely consultation for compliance. So they will help you find labs where they can send it to
I see.
and receive the certifications.
Do you think out of this, I mean, it's quite a lot. Out of 200, only 50 are operation. That's
Yeah,
That's
I don't
quite
know
an
how
interesting
accurate
figure.
that is. Yeah, it's hearsay, but you
I
know.
see.
But it's the reason why that is, if you want an answer to that question, is because these machines look like they're easy, but if you have no manufacturing experience or mechanical engineers
Right.
on hand,
Right.
they break down very quickly, and you can't even make they're supposed to make 100,000 masks a day, right? I've heard people who make maybe like a couple hundred, and then that's it for the whole day. So if this company or this person or whoever they start this company thinking they would just set the machine up and be done with it, a lot of those people end up not being able to deliver.
So you're telling me expect technical problems.
Correct. We even experienced technical problems for a long time. Even today, we constantly have to readjust. The difference is we came from a manufacturing background, so we have engineers on board. My dad himself is an engineer, like I said before. So our machine difficulties are minimized.
Right. That's a big difference, rather than relying on someone else to come
Right.
over.
And I'm going to be honest here, because Hong Kong hasn't been manufacturing for decades, so there's not that kind of talent in Hong Kong. And most people would probably just hire from China, except they can't come here. So that's the big problem right now.
During the lockdown period. you think a lot of the Hong Kong people who set up mask factories, are they driven by profit or by something else?
I feel like it's a split. In a capitalist society, you cannot rule out the power of money, right? So I think most people are either partially or fully driven by profit. But I do believe that there are a lot of companies who are doing this also for good. Like us, I can't say that we're not, we're 100% driven by nonprofit. We're not a nonprofit company. We're absolutely trying to make a profit here. But our, motivation is also to provide goods for the world in a time of need.
Do you think should face mask production be made into a business, a non-profit, or something else? What is the ideal type of a face mask
I think
organization?
so. I think Taiwan did it in a really interesting way, in which they limit the price on all it. So it was operating kind of like a government-funded NGO. I think that works for a small society, but I think for the world as a whole, the proper incentives are needed for factories to keep improving and create the best products. So I do believe that for-profit organizations are still the best way to do it.
All right. For your company, is profit or social mission is more important?
Social mission is more important.
Social mission.
Yes, but profit is a close second.
And how does that compare to the first month or the first day when you started Mask Lab? Did that the duality of between
I
this or
feel
that,
like-
did it change at all?
So I have this tattoo, and this is why I don't. It's been the same.
I don't read Chinese.
Oh, sorry.
哦，你敲敲我。
Don't forget why you started.
Yeah, yeah.
So can you tell me more about that?
Oh,
So we can say.
So this is my life's motto.
Oh.
This has nothing to do with masks. I've got this a while ago, but for me, I got this tattoo because my life's motto is, I think as time goes on, a lot of people lose sight of why they started doing something, right? And doesn't matter if it's business, could be romance, it could be relationships with your friends and family, or it could be anything, a hobby that you do. Over time, you lose track of why you started to begin with. And for me, my personal motto is never lose sight of why you started. And so to answer your question, it hasn't changed.
So the social mission has been there from
Correct,
from the
from the
beginning.
beginning.
If you were to give a number, percentage between profit versus social mission,
Oh,
what is it now and
So-
what was it back then?
social mission 60%, profit 40%, and right now it's the same.
So 60% is the social mission. Yeah?
Yep.
Do you think the face mask production is a short-lived trend in Hong Kong, or no, not, and why?
Do you mean that you think it's gonna go away?
The trend for a lot of people to set up mask factories is it a
I think
short-lived trend?
okay. So I think the trend of setting up mass factories is definitely short-lived. I don't think it's profitable for all these companies to be doing it at the same time. Now, do I think mask making is short-lived? I absolutely do not, because there is no end in sight for this pandemic. And even after this pandemic, I think fundamentally our behaviors have been programmed to change. Like me personally, I hated wearing masks before, but now whenever I'm in public, I wear a mask simply because I now consider this a hygienic thing to do. So I believe mask making is going to be an evergreen industry, but the current trend is going to stop.
Do you have competitors?
Oh, tons. 200. 200 is.
Do you see the reusable mask as a competitor?
I do not necessarily think they're competing. One of the main reasons is because after this first wave is over, a lot of companies, a lot of hospitals will still need this, and reusable masks are not currently able to enter those markets. So, no, I don't consider them 100% a competitor. Do they compete for our consumer market? Absolutely. But right now, their products are, number one, less breathable, and number two, less protective. So at this point in the juncture, I believe people prefer disposable masks if they can help it, other than the environmental factors. So yeah, I feel like that would answer your question.
Have you heard about illegal or illicit masks?
Have I heard about them?
Yeah.
I don't know what would be considered illegal masks.
So we were hoping to hear from you. Do your industry have a definition what is considered illegal or illicit masks?
Okay, so the one thing I would say is that Hong Kong actually doesn't have any laws preventing the sale of any kind of mask, provided you don't make claims that can't be backed up. So even if you have no filter on the inside, you can still sell it as a mask. You just can't say it has any kind of filter. So to the letter of your question, I don't believe I've ever seen an illegal mask. The only type of illegal masks that I've seen are masks making false claims, and those we would consider to be illicit.
Does this exist in reality? Do people?
Oh,
make
absolutely.
those
I think so. One of the biggest things was back in, I think, February. Most of the companies or factories starting up were in China, and I've seen a lot of fake CE certificates. I've seen a lot of fake test reports that's done by third-party testing labs that are not certified in China. And what ended up happening was that Europe started rejecting a lot of those. What I find to be interesting is that in February, if you started shipping anything into the United States or to Europe, they would take anything. But now, even since we have all the documents, they're still very strict, and they go through everything because now they don't take anything up to chance. So any face masks that they believe to come from labs that are not certified, they reject. And that's actually also why we have an oversupply of masks in Hong Kong right now, I believe.
Now, I think China is the world's hub for mask manufacturing, right? And the situation has gradually normalized in China, and face mask factory have returned or resumed the operations. How do you think the return to normality for Chinese face mask factory, how is it going to affect Hong Kong's face mask ecosystem?
Well, I think there's two parts of this question. Number one, things are changing every week. Okay, so as of last week, I would say China has been pretty stable, but this week, from all the calls we've been getting, it seems like masks are ramping up again in China because of the new cases that they found in Beijing. Yeah. So at this moment, it's hard to predict exactly what effects it would have in Hong Kong. From my experience working with consumers in Hong Kong, they prefer Hong Kong-made masks or Taiwan-made masks, or US-made masks, or Japan-made masks. Hong Kong, the population of Hong Kong in general does not trust masks that come from mainland China. So that's so on the consumer side, there's that. But in terms of supply for the rest of the world, the skepticism for Chinese-made products is still there, but you cannot beat their price right now. So if you're looking at markets such as Southeast Asia or South America, where price point is the number one factor in deciding whether to purchase a product, then they have an absolute edge, because we've been feeling the effects as well, which is we were able, like our stuff that we make here, we cannot compete with China-made masks for markets such as Brazil, for instance.
So, for example, for a box of masks that you sell, how much on average do you sell per box?
88 Hong Kong dollars.
For 50 pieces?
25.
For 25 pieces?
Correct.
Okay, $88.
Yes.
If this were in China, how much would they sell from China?
Oh, I've seen they can probably sell for $50.
$50.
They can probably sell for $50.
Can Hong Kong? I mean, you mentioned earlier that we don't have any manufacturing sectors in Hong Kong anymore. Those were 1970s or 1960s of Hong Kong. So, can Hong Kong become the world's hub or center of excellence for mass production?
Oh, it's definitely possible.
It's possible.
It's definitely possible. I think with the amount of new manufacturers entering the space and the amount of scrutiny that the public gives masks factories in Hong Kong, the same amount of scrutiny is not given to any country's masks. I find this actually kind of amazing, which is Hong Kong's population is extremely skeptical of mask factories. So I call it trial by fire. If you can make it in Hong Kong, you can make it anywhere in the world. So by extension, I believe after this whole process, Hong Kong could potentially create the most safe, the most high quality masks in the world.
It's interesting you mentioned that it's because of the consumers are really checking into
Yeah. If
how
you-
masks are made and things
Yeah.
like that. What was the reason behind it? Why were they very interested to know how it's being manufactured?
I don't know. I feel like maybe also because the Hong Kong media has been very it has covered a lot of this, right? And has been very very active in educating the population on what constitutes a good mask. So we have people coming on tours here every like starting at 3 every day. They come tour, and they would know more, about masks than anybody I've ever known outside of Hong Kong. They would ask the right questions, like, oh, what's your BFE, PFE, and what about your VFE? And we have to explain that VFE is not actually required, but good thing that you guys know about it, because I asked my customers in the US, they have no idea.
I see. Have you exported your mask overseas?
Yes, we have done a lot of, we have sold a lot to Italy, some to Germany. We have sold a bunch to the US as well. Well, US is basically my home, so
I see.
we do
Out
a
of your export sales compared to your total sales, how many percent are export out of your total sales?
It changes. In the beginning, it was around 80%. Now, I'd say it's maybe 60%.
So 60% exports
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
Used to be 80%.
Yeah. But this is different for us because we didn't do local businesses at first. We started the company and we sold to our existing connections first.
Which are overseas.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
So you started with exporting first before
Yes,
feeling
a lot.
the local demand.
Correct. A lot of companies start with filling local, but we didn't actually. Our company has been doing export for 20 years, so we don't have a whole lot of connections
I see.
locally until recently.
I see.
Yeah.
So your buyers overseas, like in Italy, Germany, US, are they like hospitals or they're companies or
Hospitals, companies, and governments actually.
governments?
Governments.
Okay. So they're pretty much B2B.
Correct, correct.
Because out of your main market, Italy, Germany, US, which one is the biggest? Any percentage you could tell us? Like, how many is the biggest one?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Your main overseas markets are Italy, Germany, and US. Is there a percentage in terms of
Yeah,
the number
I
of
would say
sales?
it's at this point because it changes all the time. At this point, I would say 70%
Italy.
Italy, yeah,
Okay, that's a lot to Italy.
yeah, 10% Germany and 20% United States.
Oh, right.
But that figure can change next week.
Sure,
So.
sure. Why Italy? I mean, do you have like a family context there? I mean, why
We
Italy and Germany?
have business connections there. Yes, not family connections, just people we've done business with.
Okay.
But also mainly because Italy has been the the epicenter of the
Epicenter.
European pandemic. So
What about Germany? You also have a previous business context there.
correct,
Right.
correct.
So that shortened the time to sell those products. Is it? The relying on your existing
Yes,
business contacts
yes,
in those
yes.
countries.
And for us that was important because we didn't have a lot of business foothold in Hong Kong just yet. So while we're setting that up, we needed to keep the factory running. So export was the way to do that.
Can you say first, although the file is so big?
Yeah.
Say first. Do you think wearing face masks should it be regulated by the government? Wearing face masks.
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know if it should be regulated by the government per se, but I think it should be. I think businesses should have policies in which if you are a public-facing company, then in public areas, everyone including customers, must be required. But I don't know if the government, as of this point, needs to regulate that. I know California, where I spend most of my time. The governor recently created a recommendation policy in which, in all public spaces, everyone must wear masks, and I think that's really smart. But I don't know if they actually enforce that. Yeah. So if you want me to rephrase my answer, I would say Yes, but I would question how it can be enforced.
What about face mask production? Should this be regulated by government policies, do you think?
Well, absolutely. Actually, I believe mask factories should be regulated, and that its output should be regularly audited by the government on its quality, but not anything else. But, the reason why I say this is because the market has been so volatile recently. So if the government were to come in and impose more restrictions and more policies on perhaps the price, for instance, then I don't think it could be sustainable for businesses.
What about the role of self or industry-wide kind of a self-certification? So instead of something coming top down from the government, but it's a form of sort of regulation set up by the players in the industry themselves. Is that a good idea?
I would say that's already kind of being done in a less formal sense, in which everyone pretty much only sells when they have third-party certifications, and when someone doesn't, all the players in the industry call them out. So, is it good? I don't know if it's too early for me to say whether it's good or not.
Have you heard about the government's funding or subsidy to local face mask factories in
Yes,
Hong Kong?
we originally looked into that.
Is that a good initiative in your view?
Well, I think it's a good initiative to initially increase the production volume of masks, but at this point, I don't really think it does much. As you can see, the financial, the incentives of people have driven 200 plus manufacturers to this industry without government subsidy. And at this point, it's actually harder to do under government subsidy because it's less flexible. And given, I think when the government first started the subsidy system, it didn't anticipate the fluctuations of material pricing. So I know of some factories who took the incentive and they were limited in who they can sell to and the price that they can sell it at, and they pretty much are operating at a loss, which is worse than doing nonprofit. So.
Is there any rooms for improvement in terms of the Hong Kong government's face mask production subsidy?
So I don't know the fine print of all of that, so I can't comment on it, but I do think that they should lift restrictions on who you can sell to. And, okay, perhaps not who you can sell to, because they need to make sure that Hong Kong citizens get the masks first. But I feel like they should loosen up and relax the price requirements, or make it more flexible according to market prices.
There are some practices out there in which people give masks for political purposes. What's your comment on that?
What does it mean to give masks for political purposes?
I don't know whether they are factories themselves or somehow they got it manufactured and they give them for political purposes for people to support their political stand or political.
Well, for me, Mask Lab was started as a non-political entity.
Yep.
I have friends and family on both sides of the political spectrum, so for me, I don't think it's a good idea for us. It might be a good idea for whatever cause they're supporting, but this is something that we would never consider doing.
Do you think people, could be in Hong Kong, could be overseas, do people benefit from your face mask production initiative? Do people benefit?
I think absolutely. I think on a macro level, what we've contributed to the mask production is of the world, however minuscule, is still a huge help, to society in general. I wouldn't, be so arrogant to say that because we started Mask Lab, the world has been changed for the better. I think we're still a drop in a large ocean. Hopefully, as we ramp up in the future, it would make a big difference.
Sure. How many people do you think have benefited from the masks, if you were to count them?
Well, if you count all the people we've sold to, I don't know. Do you want me to just throw out a number? I don't really want to be quoted
do you
on
have
a
a number?
I would say right now, maybe if you talk about the masks we've sold so far, divided by maybe how many people use per mask, I would say maybe 1 million people in the world total. I hope.
Sure. Has anyone complained about the masks that you produce?
Yes, but very few. So we have complaints about the ear loops falling off sometimes. We have not about the masks themselves actually. Sometimes it's of the mask being packaged and it's wrinkled or squashed. Those are a very small percentage, and we address those immediately and we replace them for free.
I see. I see. Will Hong Kong come out stronger after the COVID-19, do you think?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think, if anything, the COVID-19 has proven that the Hong Kong people are very resilient, and I'm very proud of what we've done here for, to fend off the pandemic. It could be so much worse.
What can other countries learn from Hong Kong's experience in dealing with COVID-19?
Well, I think Hong Kong has been great with its contact tracing, and also I don't know if you can replicate a culture, because right now I think the culture factor is actually one of the biggest reasons why Hong Kong is the way it is. I come from the United States, or I spend a lot of time there, and right now the biggest battle that they're fighting still is to convince people to wear masks. You have people who are refusing to wear masks. So that is one thing I feel like the world can learn from Hong Kong, which is the mask wearing culture. And whether that boils down to the collectivism mentality of Eastern cultures versus the individualist mindset, I don't know. I'm not a sociologist, but I feel like it has something to do with it. So that's number one. And number two is, for the life of me, I don't understand why Western countries don't do contact tracing as well as Hong Kong does. But I think contact tracing is hugely important. They shut down everything, which helps. But during the shutdown, I had hoped that they would develop a quarantine and a contact tracing program, but they didn't. So I don't know how that's going to turn out. We're still in the middle of it. I can't comment on that, but I think that's a huge thing the world can learn from Hong Kong.
Do you think among the Hong Kong people during the COVID-19 epidemic, was there a mutual help among people in the communities?
I think so. In the beginning, when the masks were in short supply, I remember it being on a bus, and this old lady came on without a mask. People would hand them masks from their own pocket. I think there was a really great sense of community in all of this, and it helped bring people together rather than push them apart.
I see. So I think probably you mentioned about it's very difficult to start a factory in Hong Kong. So what has been the biggest challenges for you in this business?
I think the biggest challenge was having the talent to operate the machinery. We have to train everybody ourselves, and the engineering talent for machinery is just doesn't exist here. I think that would be the biggest challenge.
That would be a factor that kills a mask factory, isn't it? If you
Oh,
don't have
hugely.
those talent.
Correct. And I know a lot of masks factories who have delayed in shipping their products simply because of that one factor.
I wonder about like fabric or raw materials. There's a lot of lockdown, and you were able still to procure them. I mean,
Correct.
how did that happen?
Like I mentioned in the beginning of the interview, it was mainly because of what we've done, and our existing suppliers have connections who are in the melt-blown fabric business. We were very lucky, obviously, but I think at this point of the juncture, we're in late June right now. It's no longer that big of a problem. It's actually fairly easy to find melt-blown fabric compared to before. But initially, that was one of the large challenges besides the machine.
Sure. How about the price of the raw material?
The price of the raw material.
Is it stabilized, getting lower, or getting too high?
I think it still fluctuates a lot. As of last week, it was a lot It's a lot lower. I would say 50% lower than what it was, a month before. But as of a couple of days ago, it came rising back up very quickly. Maybe rising by 20% sometimes, some places. So hard to say right now. Fluctuates a lot, and the recent fluctuations because of the Beijing incident. So
So you're saying the world still largely depends on China for the raw material for masks?
correct, mostly. I believe they export something like 90% or something like that. I don't quote me on that number actually. I don't know. But
Do you see other countries start their own face mask production after this COVID-19?
yeah, so I've actually talked to a guy doing business in Cambodia and Laos. I believe a lot of these countries are trying to start their own mask factory. I've also talked to, United States, obviously, because Made in USA is a huge initiative that they're trying to push. So absolutely, whether they can succeed or not, or have the workforce necessary to do that, or the resources to do it, that's another question. But from what I've seen so far, most countries are trying to do it locally.
Sure. Earlier you mentioned that Hong Kong can become a world's hub or center of excellence for mass production. Is there an advantage for Hong Kong apart from perhaps very curious, very demanding consumers? Is there an advantage for Hong Kong to
I think the advantage, if you ask me, the advantage is the current situation, a socio-political situation with China and a lack of trust with that. And Hong Kong, made in Hong Kong stuff would be a beneficiary of that conflict, mainly because I think a lot of countries would still need the supply, but would be hesitant on getting it from mainland China. So that's number one. And sorry, actually that's the whole point. But I think there's a caveat to that, which is the recent announcement by the U.S. government on how Hong Kong would be treated and trade the same as mainland China. So that's still to be seen. What would come of that? If that does occur, then at that point, I don't know if there's a benefit or there's an advantage.
What has been the biggest mistakes or failures, if any, with your mask lab?
Okay, I think the biggest failure was using N99 melt-blown fabric to make our first batch of masks.
What would they consider a mistake?
Because what we didn't realize was that they test for different standards. So N99 fabric filters out 99.9% of stuff, but it's less breathable, and we couldn't pass the breathability test. And that's been one point of contention in Hong Kong. For 2 months, our brand was known as the non-breathable brand. So now we fixed it. We have new melt-blown fabric and we've had new tests, but that was the biggest mistake we made. Also why we couldn't sell much in Hong Kong in the beginning, because Hong Kong customers are very demanding, and as soon as they see that, they make jokes about it. We have memes online like, oh, they're, Mask Lab. We're known as the company that makes, I forget what the word they use for it, but basically you would die from like
what do you call it in Chinese? 中文.
中文 in Chinese.
Let me think.
Is the word is called non-breathable?
Yeah. I'm trying to think.
窒息
窒息口罩.
窒息口罩嘅
Okay. All right. Cool. Like when you are exporting to Italy, Germany, US, do those countries require you to have a proper certifications for the masks?
Correct. Yes. They just require that we have the CE mark, and if you look over there, we have the CE certificate right there.
So that means you have an auditor to come and audit your facility.
Correct.
To check. Do this have to be companies based in those countries to do this
Yes.
CE certification?
So CE certifications have to be issued by EU bodies.
Right.
So this one right here is called Obelisk. They are based in Belgium. So the one thing with three-ply surgical face masks is that it's less stringent on the certificate itself. So we can self-declare that we are compliant. But for upstairs, for FFP2, we're in the process of getting audited for that, and that certificate must be written by a EU body. Whereas this one, they provide a certificate of it's different. For this one, they are our representative, certificate of representation, whereas that one, they have to provide a certificate of conformity.
So the one upstairs will have to pass through a more stringent
Correct.
tests.
Yes.
So what are your next plans with this mask line?
Well, we're trying to create as many different kinds of designs and different styles of masks. So we're coming out with the KF94 style probably in a week and a half or 2 weeks, and we're trying to cover all spectrums. And since we have the FFP2 now, we want to target more hospitals and more governments, which we've done in the past, but hospitals need more N95 style masks than they do surgical. Surgical is not in short supply right now. N95 is. So there's that. So for the near future, we're looking about 2 months ahead right now, and we want to stay flexible. For the next 2 months, it's just launching as many styles as possible.
That matters for the sales, isn't it?
Yes, correct.
Because there are also other mask factories that also making very colorful.
Correct. Yeah, it's a trend. You'll see the trend became like in the beginning, everyone's just trying to get the reports out, trying to compete over reports. Now people are competing over colors, but we're trying to compete over the breadth of styles that we make. Only one company in Hong Kong is making KF94 style masks. We want to be the second one. Nobody so far is making it with a lot of different designs. So we're creating one with camouflage. We're creating one with a gradient. So we're doing a few of these different styles.
To better prepare Hong Kong for another big epidemic like COVID-19. Hopefully that
Hopefully it doesn't happen. But
what advice will you give to Hong Kong government?
I think take all threats seriously. I actually think Hong Kong government did okay, not amazingly, but I think after this experience, everyone will be taking threats seriously. I come from an experience of being in the U.S. as everything was shutting down, and I realized the biggest problem here was that governments have what we call the normalcy bias, which is they see it happening over there. They don't think, oh, it could be over here in a week or two. And I think just in the future, just as soon as something happens, always be aware of the normalcy bias and implement backup plans and policies to face that immediately. And I think not just Hong Kong, I think most countries need to learn from that, especially Western countries.
What advice would you give to businesses in general to better prepare for the next epidemic?
Have a lot of cash. I think this is one thing that shocked me as a business person was how many companies in the world didn't have enough cash. So like if they don't have revenue for a month or two, they're out of business. It's amazing to me. We're not even talking about small to medium enterprises. We're talking about public companies, Fortune 500 companies are going down because of this. And I think the wheel of capitalism has been turning so hard for so many years that people were living by the edge. And I think we maybe need to take a step back. But it's difficult because once you start taking a step back, the economic growth disappears. Then we're looking at a lot of different other problems, right? So I think it's a problem that as a society we're facing. It's a big wheel of capitalism that we have to fight.
Sure. What advice would you give to the civil society?
The civil society?
Yeah.
I don't know. Just be courteous of others. Be less. Don't be selfish.
Right.
I think a lot of societies are really selfish.
You mean like by not wearing masks?
Yeah,
Is that
correct.
an example? So what you said? I'm talking about your previous business background and occupation. You said you have run a couple of business. What business were you?
Yeah. So in 10 years ago, I started my first e-commerce brand. It's called Brands Brands. It was basically home organization products that you can stick on the wall. I sold that to Elmer's in the United States. So
it's a retail.
It's a retail business. Also manufacturing. I had a plant in Fujian, China.
Oh.
I did that.
So that is the main sort of entrepreneurial experience.
Yeah.
And have you worked for someone else as a professional?
Have I worked? I have, but the only time I worked was in the movie business.
Movie?
What else? Like, I graduated college 12 years ago. and coming out, I was very interested in movie making. So the first few jobs for the first year was in movie production.
Like Hollywood kind of.
Yes, exactly. It was in Hollywood. Well, back then they shot Hollywood movies that year in Michigan. So I went to the University of Michigan. So all my jobs were over there. Yeah, so I did that, and I had a couple, and I also, I have a consulting business for e-commerce brands. I help them develop products, samples, and manufacture in China. So, and then my latest is I'm also a software engineer, so my latest business is in blockchain.
So you studied computer science, can you say so?
I studied film, computer science, and economics.
Oh, study a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I have a lot of interests, and this is kind of like everything coming together.
Right.
Because I had to make videos for like we started a YouTube channel for MassLab.
You produce the video.
I had to produce the videos. I had to write the software
man of talent.
for tour booking, all that stuff. Because nobody could travel here, so I don't have anybody I usually work with. I had to do everything, which is fun. It's been challenging. It's been the busiest I've ever been in like the last 10 years or so, but it's been very rewarding.
Right. Well, what about your age range? Are you?
I'm 33.
33. I think I've covered. Did I miss any questions, Tiffany? No. So we can stop it.
I'm
so
curious,
this is the factory that we can see that customers can come in. I mean, what's the reason behind making it so open to consumers?
Well, because we want to show that we have nothing to hide. A lot of other companies and a lot of factories, they don't want to show their production process because maybe they're doing something, not optimally. So we want to be able to just show the world that, hey, if you want to come see it, if you have any questions regarding our quality or our where it's made, some people don't even believe it's made in Hong Kong. We say, come take a look. We're packaging it in front of your eyes. We're making it. It's coming out of the machine. So right now it's stopped, but. Yeah.
Aren't you afraid of intellectual property issues? People come and check and copy your things.
Well, there's nothing to copy really because these machines, I wouldn't say they're standard per se, but if you want to make masks, you buy these machines. There's not, we didn't develop these machines ourselves. They already exist. So no, we're not really afraid. Maybe for designs, yes. So that's why we keep them new designs tucked in the back. But we're not, if you're a good innovator, you shouldn't be afraid all the time of people copying because you should always be one or two steps ahead. Anyway, so this is our automated filter tester. At 3 o'clock, that's when they start touring.
Right.
So during the tour, we have a section where they come here, and then we test their mask. Each booking they can offer a mask up, and we'll test it. And you can see inside these masks are from yesterday's test. Okay. So we would print a small report and put it on it. But for logistical purposes, we don't want to put it in and out, so they can take a picture and then we keep it. So that tests the differential pressure and also the BFE.
BFE.
Yeah, but for the tours, we don't want to do both. It takes too much time, so we just do BFE because that's the most important thing. So that's the packaging line. On the right there, you see the automated packaging line. So they put the masks down. They come out in an individual package. Yeah. If you can see that.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, yeah.
I guess you are the only face mask factory that how do you call it? Do an open tour.
Yes, to
show the customers.
Yes, that's what we released a press release recently saying the Hong Kong's only open tour mask factory. So far, we haven't seen a second one.
And when you said that you have a tester machine, that is the only machine to test. You don't have any other machine.
No, that's the only one. We might be buying more for fluid splashes later, but for filtration efficiency and Delta B, that's enough. That one machine can do both. So this one, it's not moving right now. They're just going through, but it's 3 layers. Yep. That's why we call it 3-ply. The top one here is the color layer. It protects against fluid splashes. On the most inside one, that's the inner layer. It's soft and more breathable. And this one that's running out here in the middle, that's the melt-blown fabric. And you can check out not this one. A lot of people have touched it, so it's lost a lot of its sheen. But
so this is called the melt-blown.
This is the melt-blown. This is what we use inside.
I heard that they only use a very tiny amount, and it will blown into such a huge
Yeah.
surface
it,
area.
It uses heat nozzles and it blows into an extruder. Yeah, and then these are the mask styles that we're coming out with soon. This is the KF94, and this one here is the.
Can you take a photo?
Yeah, you can take a photo. You can also, if you.
Oh, we're still recording.
the
Sorry,
next-
let me take.
No problem.
Let me take.
And if you need more photos, you can add me on WhatsApp
Oh,
and
yeah.
just request the photos.
Yep,
We can do this after, and
Yeah.
then just whatever photo you want, because I have a whole list. I can just
Sure,
send it to you.
Let me help you with that.
Okay.
Okay, so that's